Hey everyone, welcome to this week's edition of Table Talk with Mike. Today I thought I'd get into something maybe a little bit more personal than I've been talking about in the past, and that is mental health. Not only why it's important to an individual, but why it's also important to the business. Um, so for me, I've dealt with depression in the past, and the first time I was clinically diagnosed with severe depression was late 2015. And through subsequent counseling after that diagnosis, realized I'd probably been dealing with it for a number of years, but had coping mechanisms to kind of help me get through each and every day. And then through 2015, for whatever reason, those coping mechanisms started to fail me to the point where by the end of the year, I could hardly get out of bed, didn't want to do anything, certainly didn't want to do anything that I loved to do normally. It just really impacted me. And of course, that impacted me on the job as well. Had a couple of stints where I went on short-term disability to take time off and get away and try and work on things and figure this all out. And through that process, yes, I have figured a lot of things out, and I recognize when my depression might be coming back, and I can take the steps necessary to kind of pull myself out of that. And one of the things I've learned, I've shared in I think a recent video was, getting out to the mountains to me is a mental health day. Doesn't matter what time of year it is. Could be in the summer, hiking, camping, even taking a drive through the mountains. In the winter, it's snowboarding or skiing. But just getting out into nature really helps my mental state and brings me back to where I need to be. From a business standpoint, though, for leaders who are running a business, to me, a leader is someone who cares about their people and wants to ensure that they're in the best possible place, not only to be successful in their role and help them achieve their targets, but also recognizes the fact that their personal mental state outside of work also has a bearing on how they act when they are at work. For me, during that period of time when I was battling depression, it certainly impacted my decision-making process. It impacted how hard I worked, and it impacted me in ways where I had a couple of stints with different companies that were much shorter than I probably would have liked, simply because of where my mental state was. I wasn't getting anything out of the company or out of the role I was doing. I certainly, when I look back in hindsight, wasn't giving my best. At the time, I would have said, yes, of course, I'm doing everything I can to succeed and reach my targets and bring success to my role. But in hindsight, I can look back, understanding where my mental state was and how that impacted me. I can see that that wasn't necessarily the case. So, from a business standpoint, like I said, a leader is someone who cares about their people and it's not that they're not concerned about the targets and sales and success and driving profits, but they understand that the person behind the desk, the person in that role, has to be in a positive mental state to get there. Someone to me who's a manager is more interested in the end result and driving and hitting those targets, and less concerned about the individual. And in my case, obviously I can't speak for everyone who's gone through this kind of thing, but in my case, over the years, I've had more managers than I have had leaders, and that's impacted how I operate. Um, Now, through all of that, I never at a point through my deepest and darkest days through depression, never reached that point where I felt like I needed to end things and just everyone would be better off if I wasn't here. But that doesn't mean it can't happen. And in fact, it did happen to me a couple of years ago, 2.5 years ago or so, after being laid off. Been laid off for about a month, was just the beginning of COVID, right before everything shut down. Uh, Three different factors kind of came all into play. It was a perfect storm. Uh, on one particular day, I was feeling fine. I wasn't feeling depressed. I've been going through some challenges, but nothing that put me in a dark mental state. On a particular day, I think it was a Tuesday. I can't remember exactly, but I think it was a Tuesday, and the day was great. Um, but after dinner, everything just hit me all at once. Being laid off, I'd never gone through that process before. Um, you know, Spending my days looking for work, poring over job sites, and then COVID shut everything down in March of 2020, and so that was one thing. Then I had an important relationship in my life ended just all of a sudden. unexpectedly. And then a third thing was a financial decision I'd made a year or two prior, kind of suddenly blew up in my face, and not in a good way. So all these things kind of factored into it. And then one night, I just all of a sudden after dinner felt like the world would be a better place if I wasn't here. And I posted something on social media that was kind of cryptic, but kind of aligning to how I was feeling. And an acquaintance of mine, not even a good friend or a family member, but an acquaintance of mine who I knew a little bit, but not really intimately or personally, not a deep personal friend, saw that and reached out to me. And if it wasn't for her talking me through and staying with me either on the phone or through texting or through just reaching out, I don't know that I'd be here today. And that taught me something. It taught me, while we often will say, talking to someone who may be going through challenges or is dealing with some depression, hey, if you ever reach that point where you need to talk to someone, I'm here for you. If you get to that point where it's dark and you think your world would be better without you, reach out and talk to me. I can speak for me. That's not where my head was. I wasn't thinking I need to talk to somebody because I'm looking at at ending my life and I need to find someone to talk to. That never entered my mind. So this whole process, what it taught me was I need to be more direct and more intentional on reaching out to someone who I know might be struggling and saying, "Hey, how you doing? Let's talk. Let's go for a coffee," rather than waiting for them to reach out to me. So mental health is not just one day a year on Bell Let's Talk. And let's face it, that's a marketing ploy by Bell. As great as we might think that initiative is, and it certainly has been good at bringing awareness out. But from a business standpoint, mental health of your employees, of your team, is just as important as their skill level and what they can do and bring to the role that they're in. So for me, it's a matter of really caring about your employees, caring about your team, and ensuring that they're in a good mental state, because that ultimately will come down to your bottom line. And it can lead, in my case, turnover, where I left a couple of jobs far earlier than I probably would have liked, because I wasn't feeling fulfilled and it just didn't feel right. And my mental state wasn't in the place where it needed to be. Or performance-wise, they're just not performing, and they end up, you have to let them go. So there's that cost as well. So mental health is a hugely important thing, not only for individuals, obviously, for their life, their family, their friends, everything about them from a personal standpoint, but from the bottom line, business perspective, the mental state of your employees, your team, is huge and can't be overlooked or minimized. So just thought I would touch on that today. It's kind of been on my mind this week. I don't really know why. I'm in a good mental state. Don't worry about that. But it was something that I felt needed to be shared. So thank you for listening. Hope it helped. Again, if you have any questions or you want to chat, leave a message for me below, or reach out to me by direct message, and we'll go from there. So again, thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you later.